Greetings. This is Walter Bradley, and this is Heart Talk with Greg Fernandez and Catherine. Thank you for joining us tonight, Catherine. And we're covering some issues in California tonight. You've heard of the Kincade Fire. Actually, there are 9 different wildfires and might be more by now. But I counted today 9 different wildfires, and we're kind of focusing on the Kincade wildfire tonight. And we want to just find out and get your input if anybody's joining us or if you want to join us. We're looking for more voices, and especially if you're out in California in the area of these fires, jump in. We want to talk with you and get your input. And if you have more, let's just say, informative information, as I say, meaning you've got some inside dope that we could use and you've got the real deal and can vet it, well, we'd definitely like to hear from you and maybe listen to what you have to say here and let your heart talk. So Greg, Catherine, Greg, start us off with your list on information for what we're going to be kind of going over tonight.
Okay, well, I hope that we can go over definitely these fires. I've pulled up a bunch of topics here for us. PG&E admits it might have ignited 21,900 acres Kincade Fire in California wine country. I hope that we could talk about the Texas custody battle that people have probably heard of by now, I would think. Even though I have the wrong link up here, but I will find the right one. Maybe we can get into some of the politics, some of the things that are going on with a guy named Michael Flynn. If you've never heard about Michael Flynn, what's happening with Adam Schiff and the whole Trump, how they're going after Donald Trump for collusion with Russia, in case you haven't heard enough about that. And then if we have some time, we'll get a little update on the Jussie Smollett case. And he is a guy who said that 2 Trump supporters beat him up, and it turns out that he actually hired them. They were friends, and he is this guy is from a show that I think it's called Empire, if I remember correctly. I don't have cable. I don't watch this stuff, so I don't really know about that. I had never heard of this guy up until this came out. But let's go ahead and start with the fires, and let's see how far we get with all of these different stories here. So
Absolutely.
Regarding the Kincade Fire, hello. I don't know what that was.
Oh, no.
Yeah, okay, so one of the videos decided it's going to play on its own. I'm going to stop that. It was pretty good timing, actually. I don't mind the timing in that one. But let me go back here. We're looking at a website, www.fire.ca.gov, California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. This is where you can pretty much learn and get the latest update about what is happening with all of the wildfires here. So looking at the website, we're going to go and look at the map that they have. You can see... Who is that? That better not be me. Okay. That's
That
okay.
was me.
As long as that's you, it's
Sorry.
good. That's all right.
I was going to the gray stage on your site, and I didn't see that video pop up. I went, oh!
That's okay. And we are
That's
live
not
here.
good.
Yeah, this is how you could tell that we are live, and we're happy to have Walter back here for another Heart Talk show, and of course to have Catherine here, who has been on this
Sorry
show
about that.
multiple times. But we are looking at all of the active fires here, I guess, and like Walter said, there are 9 here. The one we're going to focus on right now is the Kincade Fire. 5% of 21,000, almost 22,000 acres have been contained. 5% as of 9:30. There were overnight, within hours, 10,000. I mean, it's just a ridiculous number of how quickly this fire started that we're talking about here. And in the East Bay and in San Francisco, we definitely see it. You can see all of that, it's coming our way. I did not know about some of these other fires here, but this is a great website that you can look at to see just some basic general stats on these fires. So focusing on the Kincade one here, we're going to go in and see what the latest is. But as far as I know, Okay, wildfire. The last update was 10:25 at 9:30, and it's still burning. Like we said, it's 5% contained. So I can view on these details here, and if there's anybody in that area who can let us know kind of what is going on, what people need, you can see the status update here. They are evacuating. They evacuated Geyserville, Cloverdale, all the different roads, so you can see exactly what's going on. The problem is because these people, where the fires are, because they're shutting down power, how are people going to really know what is going on? But that's always been some of the biggest issues here. It's always good to have some type of a battery power radio. Make sure that you're prepped. Make sure that you are ready for these things to happen, and make sure that you are ready to get out of Dodge, because there will come a point where you won't be able to. Looking at some of the damages and loss, 49 structures have been destroyed so far. Cooperators and personnel. How many personnel? And I do know some volunteers that are going out there, some people that are heading out there. So try to connect with the local law enforcement, because you don't want to become somebody that goes out there to help and ends up becoming a victim too. So just wanted to keep everybody updated on that. And tying into that is this PG&E story where that video started for some reason. And this is from ABC 10. And I'd like to get both of your views on this. PG&E admits it might have ignited 21,900-acre Kincade fire in California wine country. PG&E said Thursday it didn't de-energize a 230,000-volt transmission line near Geyserville that malfunctioned minutes before the fire erupted. Have you guys heard about this?
Yes, I did, and I had read about the PG&E's confession, and it makes me think. Now, Greg, if you remember when I was in California with you back there,
Mm-hmm.
in the wintertime, the fires seemed to go away, or they were, basically put out by December, generally, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, but they got it cleared up, and by winter, when the cooler, rainy part of the year came in, generally, the fires were pretty much done.
Right.
And what I have noticed recently in the last couple of years, in the last 3 years, it seemed like the fires, 3 to 4 years maybe, the fires have increased and it's gone longer to where it's almost like a year-round event. Is that what you have noticed out there?
It
Because
does. Yeah, it does seem to be happening more, and that's why it's good to have these type of sites. And I'm sure there are other sites too that also follow these different fires, because when you start looking at it, there are a lot more fires than I would have thought or that I would have heard of. So I will be curious to see as we get into closer to September, uh, where these, are we going to have more fires? What's going to happen then? So I'm very curious to see where
yes,
all of this goes, and how are they going to stop it if it's at 5% now. But I'm getting tired of hearing about all of these wildfires constantly, and then later on it turns out that somebody set this fire. So that's what I'm going to be looking for, is once everything is calmed down, then we'll see.
that's right. And I am always curious. I thought all these wildfires, they can't be all tied to the electrical PG&E, and if they are, that would be even more suspicious.
Right.
There are some that occur, but if you're doing maintenance on your lines, it's not as likely to be, of course, then there's wind and there's storms. Okay.
So,
And
Catherine, you probably don't get too many fires up where you're at.
Well, we do get fires here in Colorado. We have
yeah,
some going right now. The latest one I can remember is the Decker's fire. But I want to mention something about, PG&E and E and how they were turning off power to so many people. And then I was watching this YouTuber. His channel is Logic Before Authority, and he watches the radar all the time, and especially right now with everything that PG&E is doing and what's happening with the fires out there in California. And when PG&E was cutting the power to those 800,000 people, it was really interesting because 7 fires started simultaneously.
Wow.
And a lot of those fires started where PG&E poles were located, but they had already had their power cut off. So I found that really interesting. And the one of the latest one on Logic Before Authorities, they just put up a video yesterday, as a matter of fact. And I think it's talking about the Kincade fire. I watched it a little bit earlier, but it's old age and I can't remember. But he's showing where you see this explosion just taking off, and this massive fire starts, just coming out of nowhere. And he shows also from a side view, like it's like ground level, not looking down, but actually ground level from a camera using infrared from a ways away, and you see where this light is on for a long time. And I think it was like a PG&E tower, I'm not sure, but as soon as they cut the power to that, like within 10 seconds or less, a massive fire erupts just to the left of where that light was, where the power was cut off of. So I'm not buying it at all that they have to cut power because it's the power lines that are causing these. There's something else going on.
I agree, and I was reading that story when you were bringing it up. I thought, oh yeah, and this interesting to me that PG&E, started cutting power to everybody after these wildfires, and I'm thinking, well, that doesn't seem to be the answer, especially as you have mentioned, Catherine. I thought, wow, all of these fires starting when they're cutting power, and it's almost like they're saying, oh, it's never been us.
Yeah.
By demonstration, when in fact it could have been something tied to them. Although I can't find anything to do that, except when they have reported, direct inference by power line or something along their grid blew and they started. And it's rare that every fire is tied to PG&E. And one story I read that said some of these are set, and some of these, I forgot which website, but I was looking and they were saying that high energy weapons, and I saw a video and it was saying that they had some feedback from those who were monitoring for satellite signals, thinking that they were getting input that was indicating that there was something being beamed into these areas. Now, I can't confirm that, and I can't remember the site to direct you to. I had written it down and I couldn't find it. But they're thinking satellite, not all the time, because that would be rather, to me, kind of obvious if a fire starts in the middle of nowhere and there's nothing around to start it and no human involvement. But I do say that this could be a possibility in today's technology, because I remember being in the military that said we were about 50 to 100 years ahead of everybody else, and they're far ahead of us in these things, especially with the satellite technology, beam technology. And if you can get a signal from space, you can certainly beam energy down from that area.
Well, and we definitely do have the directed energy weapons. That's no longer a secret anymore. And of course, I agree with you. There's no way for us, the layman, to know for sure. However, when 7 fires start simultaneously in areas where the power has been cut, and when they turn that power off, those power lines are dead. They don't have live electricity running through them. They shut them down for that purpose because they said they were trying to avoid fires. And then all of a sudden you have 7 erupting at the same time in different parts and only in the areas where they shut off power. Something isn't right there. So it's like, okay. They can't pull the wool over our eyes anymore, I don't think. I think the vast majority of people are starting to catch on.
And I think so. And Greg, maybe you're in California. Have you noticed anything strange? I was around big fires when we had the big fire in Oakland and the Oakland Hills fire. and I don't think they discovered where that thing originated. I have to look that back up and come back maybe next time. But the reality is, California and the West, Colorado, and even Texas at times, have had these types of fires. Now, when I was growing up in the 70s, this wasn't near as bad, at least from the reporting in the news of that era and of that time. We didn't hear major fires consuming tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of acres of prime forest land. And at least I never saw it, or they didn't report it much. But I knew in Texas we didn't have too many. And I remember when I moved there in the 80s, there wasn't too much of that. But as we got into the 90s and further, it became more prolific. Greg, you grew up in California, did you see the same thing?
We've always had fires. I always remember
About
having
the
fires.
propensity of the number of fires. Because I
Um,
remember back in the earlier days, there
mhm.
were fewer fires.
Okay, yeah, I think there were always like one or two in my lifetime. I'm 40 years old,
Right.
so I think there were maybe, yeah, like two or three really big fires that really stuck out. And because my dad was a firefighter here,
Firefighter.
those were kind of the ones that we would always be kind of worried, and it wasn't that many here. But I also didn't have a website that I could go and actually see how many fires were happening. The other question that I had is the smart meter. When did these actually start coming here? Are we having more fires? Is part of the reason why they're shutting down power, is it tied to these meters that aren't really smart? And are they causing some of these fires, or are they contributing to some of these fires that are happening? I do think some of it is part of the environmentalists here, who don't want anything touched, and it's that has gotten crazier. That's a whole nother issue, a whole nother topic. But I do, that's a great thing that you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about that. Living here, were there more fires here before we had these uh, smart meters? It's hard to call it a smart meter. There's got to be, what is the
Yeah.
real name? It is not a
Why do
smart
they
meter.
call it a smart
That's just
meter?
a term.
Maybe
It,
that means we're smarter than you. We're getting you with a smart meter.
I call it a killer meter. It's just like these things. We should not be so close to these things. They force it on us. If it's so great, people would want it. They would be knocking down doors to get it, not having it forced on us. That's a totally different thing, because it's better
Yep,
for these companies, um,
that's a
because of
whole deal.
profits. Yeah, that's a whole nother issue there.
Because they can remotely monitor use, and they can remotely get your bill, and who knows what influence that meter can have on things, and how they can influence the meter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's the
and
thing.
in our chat room here, we do have our live chat room. So She-Wolf, thanks for joining us there in the live YouTube chat room. And she says, "Were fires as prevalent, and were they as intense as now?" I think that's basically what I was trying to say in like 20 minutes. She said it in like one sentence.
Yeah, and that's the point that I was wanting to look at. Why do the fires now seem to last all year and the number increase, where before they got them contained, they put them out, and there was a time when there were no fires, but now it's continuous.
Is it
Interesting.
tied to these meters? Is it tied to directed energy weapons? Is it a coincidence? Is it tied to the environmentalists? Is it just a big cocktail of all of these different things that people are waiting on, that the local government here is waiting to seize on, to say, look, PG&E can no longer do its job. We need to regulate this. We need to take control of this for your safety, instead of saying, you know what, let's find some other people that can compete with PG&E in this area. That's what I would like to see. Not just
I
them
agree.
or the government. There's got to be more choices.
I don't
Well,
ever see that happening for California.
but I'll tell you what, let me tell you something. We have choices in Texas, but I can tell that it's not well regulated because it hasn't done much good for us.
Really?
And I'm afraid in California it might even be worse if that's possible.
Yeah.
because we haven't noticed much savings, and we've got several electric companies at work here. And the big scary thing for me is there are the electric companies, and then there's the delivery mechanism. The poles and the wires are owned by Encore here in
Mm.
Texas, Central Texas anyway.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
And that's a separate company, and they add another 90, 80, $90 a month.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
not that much. Sometimes it's higher. It's
That's crazy.
lower, it's 18 to, you know, more. I haven't looked at that, so don't take my word for it, but I've seen that and heard somebody say that it's up to that point. So that's not vetted. But so that means you've got the electric company. Oh, and pretty soon they'll have the pole company and the wire company and the workman's company, and it's going to add these, and it's just a way of stacking fees on there to get more money for what is contained really within one arena. And I think that that's gouging, and well, I call it gouging anyway. When we used to have one electric company, they sent you the bill, and that covered everything.
Yeah.
Delivery, your electric power, is based on your usage, not just the poles that bring you in the wire and all of that. Because I look at that and I started laughing. I thought, wow, that's a bureaucratic way of looking at it.
And,
And you get all the details. Well, this wire and poles out there, that's separate from the electric company, which, well, we have to charge for that. And then there's peak usage when we'll have to charge you more, when
right.
everybody's using it. And
Then they're
then,
gonna
then there's the lower
rolling
side.
blackouts, right? Rolling
Yes,
blackouts, and we still get charged. It's not like they okay, we don't get charged for the rolling blackout. No, we still get charged.
exactly. And,
And
and it's like a third world country.
and Greg, did you say it was She-Wolf that was online asking the question about the fires?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, She-Wolf. This is Catherine. I want to just kind of address that real quickly because I was living in California for a good chunk of my life, and I was out there in the early 1970s. And I can tell you from my experience that fires were never spoken of. And then as I got to be like in high school, then you would hear about a fire, taking place in Southern California. And then it got to be a yearly thing where the fires were taking place in Southern California, always in the same area, and it got to be everybody knew where they were going to be. To where now it's like it's anywhere, everywhere, and when PG&E shuts off the power, it's guaranteed to have a fire. At
Wow.
least that's the way it appears right
Yep.
now.
Yep.
The amount of fires that are happening now never occurred when I was younger, and you know, and that would be something that would kind of be what we would talk about because there wasn't really much to discuss back in those days. So yeah, they have definitely increased in the number and the intensity.
Wow.
I've got an interesting report here. It was done in 1918. I mean,
Wow, that's great. That's a great report. All right. Look how far back it
20,
goes.
let
2018.
me
Yeah.
rephrase that. 2018. But anyway, it's on USA Today,
Hmm.
and it's saying, how do wildfires start? All it takes is a spark. And that's interesting how they say that.
Yeah, if that were
And
true, you see, if that were true, we could all start a campfire, right?
And that's
But
exactly.
no.
And and it says here's their take, and they're put out in the media. In the early history of Earth, nearly all wildfires were started by lightning strikes.
Hmm.
That's not quite true. But see, they're telling you something that's not quite true, kind of true, but not quite true. And it says in early history of Earth. They don't refer to what era they're even talking about. So it's generalistic. Nearly all wildfires were started by lightning strikes. Well, that's kind of a generalistic thing. You don't have to do research to come up with that. It says now they're coming to their point, now that humans have come on the scene, like they
Uh-oh.
were never on the scene. We are, do you see how they word that?
It's our
We're
fault.
responsible for the vast majority of fires. So they're leading into a direction that's clearly not true.
Mhm.
Because at that one article that you're talking about, they're talking about PG&E and electrical power lines being a cause. And it obfuscates, investigation into a lot of these fires they don't know, I think. and they assume, because it's hard. You got to go to the place of origin, and if they get there, they have to really do some investigative takes on what's going on, because an electrical fire that starts from an electrical source from PG&E will definitely have the evidence that you can take a picture and say, "Oh, see that? Look, right here, boom."
Yeah, and
we don't ever hear that.
they're blaming climate change in
Oh no, that's
this
just
this
a bunch
article
of
that you're talking about. It's
climate change
interesting.
start a fire.
It's always about climate change. I think it used to be global cooling, then it was global warming. Now it's just climate
Yeah.
change. I thought I
But
was
right
I
now
was
they say
Hold on.
the Earth is really cooling. They
And
say it's
did
still
you-
cooling, really.
oh
Right.
okay.
Did you guys hear about the fact that the hole in the ozone layer is the smallest it has ever been, yet we have climate change, right? We have problems with the carbon thing,
Oh
which is supposed to be
Oh, yeah.
creating the hole in the ozone, but the hole in the ozone is healed.
Shrinking and gone now.
Yeah, it's like,
But we're
okay,
not, and CO2 is at its highest levels. And I did some
Yes.
research on that, and I read a study that when CO2 is at its highest, it was during the Ice Age.
right?
And
Well,
How
and,
do they
and they
know?
tend to forget that the CO2 is what the plants need to survive. You take away the
Exactly.
CO2 and all of the plants die.
yeah, and they say, oh, it's because they're cutting down on the trees. Well, we have enough grass growing. They do it. All the plants, which can take the place of any tree, so it doesn't really affect CO2. And CO2 cannot hold, it says it holds the heat and then reflects it back. Well, wait a minute. It's either holding the heat, oxygen, it holds the heat, but then it reflects it back. How does it reflect it? Because
Darn you, Walter,
has to
stop thinking.
it has to reflect. It has to be, to reflect, it's got to be kind of like a glass mirror. To reflect heat, you have to have something to reflect it. And I thought, that doesn't make sense to me whatsoever. That's not even scientific. What about nitrogen? Nitrogen forms most of our atmosphere. Then we have oxygen and other trace gases. So why isn't it the nitrogen effect? You know, I look at CO2. CO2 is not the problem. And I went to a scientific study that said everybody that's complaining about it being CO2 are not basing their real facts in science, because, and they listed that one, CO2 was highest during the Ice Age. Well, why didn't we have global melting then? And the problem is, in what I say, it all relates. You know, they talk about it's the economy, Mr. Politician. Well, what about the relation of the Earth's position to that big thing in the sky we call the sun? And if there is any melting things, it could melt that and we still be cooling. It's all in the orientation to the sun. That's the issue. And CO2 and people, no matter what they do, and they even had Jerry Brown checking the flatulence of cows of how much they were putting out as methane.
Jerry Brown's
Yes.
an idiot, though.
That's
Oh my
ridiculous.
That
God.
was stupid.
And
That's
I can say that,
ridiculous.
you
It
know,
sounds like
because
something
I
he would
worked
do.
for the guy.
Oh, you did?
No.
Well,
Oh,
I've
right.
met him and talked
Yep.
with him. He's a great person to talk to, and he's very intelligent, but he's playing the party line.
Oh no, he's an idiot. I'll go with you toe to toe on that one. Jerry Brown. Jerry
I'll
Brown's an
take your
idiot.
word for it. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I
If
trust
you
you on
work
that.
for him, well then I've got your opinion. But,
You should
he
know.
wanted to include me in his campaign for Oakland, and I thought, oh no, that's okay. I'm
Yeah, you don't want to be a Clinton. That guy just,
Oh,
he's dirty, man. That guy is just like, he's a
Well-
California Clinton right there. Don't mess with
Listen, I'll
him.
tell you something right now.
You might end up
Anybody
killing
who is-
yourself. Yeah. Anybody.
Anybody that's at the highest level of politics
Mhm.
is not totally clean. You don't
Right.
get up there and get into, you know, I voted for Trump. I like him and I don't like him because he could be a prop to get those people that aren't involved into the process so they can make a switch.
Yep.
I think that they could pull off where Warren wins the election.
Oh, don't
That
say
sounds
that.
That
Don't say
scares me.
that's all we
But
need.
you want to know what's And let
Pocahontas?
me
No.
tell you the time.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the time. Now, do y'all watch The Simpsons?
No, I
You
have,
know
but
where
no.
I'm going.
Yeah. Oh, oh, here we
I
go.
don't really watch it.
Time travel.
I
Yeah.
saw the episode they put where they said Trump would win the election. He's in the election.
Right.
Then we have the girl, the daughter of Homer, becoming the president after him.
Lisa.
And I thought,
Hmm.
yeah. And I thought, wait a minute. Does that mean that there's going to be a woman after Trump?
It could be
And
his daughter.
think about it. What if Melania was that person? Oh, well, never mind. But it's scary to think that they're pointing to a cartoon as predicting the future. Or maybe it's a program where the people who are doing the workings are putting it in cartoon form. And I thought,
Yep.
that isn't what they're doing, are they? Well, they made some tie-ins to The Simpsons and about how it ties to reality. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I'm right. Maybe they are putting it in The Simpsons because they say certain times the satanics will show you what they're going to do, but they don't tell you. They just show it in various forms. And if you're observant, you go, oh, wow, look at that. That happened kind of, wow, that's interesting. And somebody tied them all together and said, look at this. You may laugh, but look how it ties together. So take a look at that yourselves.
Oh,
and see
there
if
it
y'all can-
is.
And
Yeah.
it freaks me out how they look at it and tie it together.
Yeah, there are 18
'Cause
times
I
that
never
The
would have thought of
Simpsons
that.
accurately predicted the future. Wow.
And what about the fires in California? Did the Simpsons have anything
I hope
on
not.
that?
I really hope not. No, like, big, like, earthquakes or nothing.
This
No.
is me being facetious, by the way. I don't think the Simpsons really predict, but somebody came up with that. To get onto the serious note, the fires there I noticed increased. I'm going to just state it truly. They have increased, and the severity of them and the speed at which they put them out has slowed down. That I have noticed. And I don't know why. How is that? They have the same force and maybe even more people than they did before. But the reaction and the ability to contain them is not as acute as it was before. It seemed like they got them done faster, although it took time,
Hmm.
than they do now. Now, I don't know if they've done a study on that, but that would be a curious development to see what that would be. And the other thing that I bring up is that they brought up the fact that the Forestry Service in California doesn't, due to the, climate people and the forest, preservers types are out there, and they're not doing as many control burns to get rid of the detritus that's making these fires almost voracious.
Hmm.
And that's something to consider. But they've had reports on that from California on that. And I didn't think of that. I thought they were doing the control. They said, no, they're not doing it as effectively, and that it is their fault, quote, that these fires get as intense and burn as rapidly due to having all the fuel out there when they do start.
Well, and not to mention all the stuff that the metals that are sprayed into the air, and how flammable are those once they hit the ground.
That's true.
Yep.
So they're
And
not going to want to try to do controlled burning if they're going to catch everything on fire.
Yep. And the thing is, I think few of them, there are some arsonists out there that do these things, but
Right.
I don't think they are the answer to all these fires.
Agreed.
That article with USA Today is trying to point you that way. But, the thing that, that they would say, oh, you're a conspiracist, you're just, and they started downing people that speak of energy being, satellite energy being. Believe me, it's very possible to do that. They have the power. They can build a satellite that could burn a house down easily. Come on. And actually radiate a house, or maybe even kill one specific person. I don't know, but I think technology is up or close to that point. And we don't think about it, but I think the technology is far and beyond what they're telling us, especially with the satellite technology, and especially when you look at how many times they're going up into space carrying satellites, especially military satellites, and those that are, covered in secrecy, and you don't know what's going up there at all. And I'm going to start tagging that a little bit and watching what goes up. And the interesting thing to do is watch what satellites go up and if anything changes in any specific area, particularly.
All right.
Because satellite technology now is you can direct an energy beam unseen, can't even feel it really, but the Earth and forests and detritus that are out there could actually start to burn. It wouldn't take much.
Well, just finishing up with these with this PG&E, where they actually admit that they might have ignited. This might be their fault. And the
They had
first
a problem
thing,
in the
yeah, they got a big thing, and hey, you don't have to worry about it because our new governor, Governor Gavin Newsom, he's he's right on it. Governor
He's
Gavin
on it.
Newsom criticized PG&E at a press conference on October 25th. That was today. PG&E simply did not do their jobs. We will hold them accountable. How do you think they're going to hold them accountable?
How can they hold them accountable? You got to realize PG&E is a major player as far as, taxes maybe.
Yeah, but we got
the
Gavin.
state gathers from them.
Gavin said he's
And
going to hold them
I,
accountable. So
well, that's the words. But there's two things about the words of politicians that we have all learned. And one is what they say is not exactly what they mean, but they mean exactly what they say.
Yep.
well,
If you follow what I'm saying,
hmm
they will do what they say, but not as you expect them to.
they'll come in and act as our savior, the same way that the devil would come in and act as our savior.
Right. And the thing, how are they going to hold them accountable? Oh, we're going to fine them, and then they'll reduce the fine, and then they'll finally come to the $50,000 fine or the $100,000 or the $1 million fine, and it sounds so grand. They make a big enough. Well, we fined them, but the problem is, what did they do about the structure that created the fire?
Right.
And I've noticed in Oakland, you notice they always have poles, wooden poles, and it's almost, I hate to say it, 19th century technology still. How did they do the telegraph and phone and power do? Poles, lines hanging down. You say that you can't advance that, and I think they could. I could think of a few good ways, but why has there been no advancement in that? None.
I don't know.
There is none. And that's why I say we're still in the 19th century. We're driving with cars, and we actually have phones now that can do this. We think we're really advanced, but we're not out of the 19th century. They had that before. Now we just got phones that we can get pictures on. That's fine. We could have done that years ago too. If you think about it, we could have.
Yep.
But been a little more bulky, but it could have been to that level. And because in certain areas, technology was like that long before we got it. And the communications that I knew of communication within the military that were common and which you could actually use if you wanted to do like very low frequency. You can go through the earth and communicate with the phone with a VLF phone. Why don't they create those or use that? Because they can make more money, really, I think, with this system. Could be wrong. Because anytime you introduce something that's rarely cheap and easy, like Tesla did, Nikola Tesla, he came up with free energy. But you got Westinghouse and all those people that got it and said, let's work this out where we deliver energy with this stuff and charge people for it. And of course, his ideas disappeared, and the government confiscated them actually. And so, and he had things about flying, gravitational craft, everything. And what they did with that information, who knows?
Yeah, in fact, they didn't even use any fuel. They used it was working off of the Earth's magnetic, that's whatever's in the ground. Yeah.
The gravitational and magnetic fields and
Yes, thank you.
zero-point technology.
Yep.
And then that means you don't need any fuel. You just have the gravitational fuel, and you put your apparatus together, and I know I'm using mercury. There's one. I could go into others, and copper and gold, and you get a unit set up that can oppose the opposite north south as in poles of the, of course, magnet. And then if you get that going, you're generating a field, and it goes
Yep.
further. But that is what a lot of people are seeing as quote unquote UFOs. And I think if you see lights on it, it ain't from another world.
Exactly. They
The
don't
thing
have
is,
the red and green blinky lights.
no, and and little windows so they can see out. No, this
Right.
doesn't occur. And now, if it's an amorphous creature that morphs and flies around, and it's totally different type of traveling vehicle that, and I'll call it angelic morphing, that just appears and disappears and can do those right angles and everything else. So I think you're dealing with technology today versus UFOs and what they call otherworldly creatures, which don't exist. They don't come from other planets, I guarantee you.
Yep.
And most likely, I know which planet they do come from is Earth, and most likely military. And I think the big three, they say China is catching up. I think they've been involved all along. China, U.S., Russia, and Europe. They all have their little hands on the technology, and whoever the United States gave that technology from Tesla, because he was way ahead of his time.
Hmm.
And that's why they took all his data and didn't want anybody else to get it after he died. They raided that place and grabbed them. And I saw just tenets of his notes, just little bits, and I thought, my gosh, 0 point, technology, a toroidal universe. And when you think toroidal, it's water-based, like the father said, the waters, and it ties into science and everything and links it all together when you look at it. And you think of the toroidal universe and you start looking at it and thinking of the toroidal function, which is electromagnetic. And if you vibrate water, it'll start to act exactly like that, creating little balls of what? Water that circle around a center. Interesting. And so when we get this universe and it's held up by the word of his power, it says in scripture, and that means what? Vibration, which produces color, spectrum.
Oh,
And so it ties into the Bible. Whoops.
yeah. Speaking of that and how it ties in, that's how the world ends, right? That's how it's supposed to end. Last time it was a flood. This time it's going to be a fire, right?
That is correct. It will be by fire. And some people say the sun will blow up. No, the fire will come from the Son himself when he comes back, not the sun in the sky, but the Son of the Father.
That's a crazy thought.
And when all of us join him, we will each become as stars like. We'll become powerful. And that will be kind of warm. And it says that, as you hear in Scripture, that all beneath us will be ashes beneath our feet. Well, that's why, as I see it, we'll become as powerful sons of light, reflecting him. And that's kind of hot. And it'll be like a flash of, and it's gone, in my opinion, mind you. This is not the scripture of the Father. This is how I see it. So it's interesting. And one of the things I want to deal with in the forests, and when I've hiked through them and everything, I've run across interesting things. And interesting events have happened to me. And I noticed with missing 411, Dave Pilates, and the people that go missing under, unquote, not the usual circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't find them. And they disappear right in front of people. They turn away for a second, turn back, and they're gone. And could this, and now this is getting in the ethereal, getting in the kind of left field a little bit, but could not sometimes these things be spiritually oriented fires, poof, that they occur? It sounds kind of odd, and spontaneous combustion is kind of crazy, but people do spontaneously combust, and they don't know why. This has been established.
I saw that in South Park, one of the early episodes of South Park. It's the first time I've ever heard of it. But you're saying that really happens? You really?
It has happened.
That's crazy, though.
But generally, people who work in certain chemical mines and stuff, it builds up within their system. So yes, it can happen in that way. But
And it's weird.
yeah,
Because they just burn up, and there's nothing left but maybe a foot or an arm, but everything else is consumed.
Wow.
yep, they burn from the inside out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard of that, and I thought that was a bunch of BS. So I looked into it, and I thought,
Oh, it's true.
It's true. Wow. Yeah, that's
and I thought,
interesting.
my gosh, that's now, could that happen in nature? Ha. Well, I think it's very possible. You get the right conditions, it can, I think. And some of these fires, I bet you they go there and go, how did it start? And I think they don't know, so they sometimes will do the government thing. Well, I know what happened. Somebody threw a cigarette and a match fell, or a car had a spark and it drove by, and that's what happened.
Well, the guy
Okay.
hasn't farted in 2 years. That's all. That's all it is. He's got a
Or
new
it was global
girlfriend.
warming. The cow farted next to the car that was driving away, had a spark, and it lit it that way.
Yeah.
To me.
It was a whole mix. Yeah. It's a con.
The anus, methanus, penis fire.
That sounds like
Okay, I
a
shouldn't have gone
conspiracy
into that
between
rabbit.
all of those. Yeah. Right. Okay.
I think the worst conspiracists live in Congress. The people are going to go kill us and throw us out. Yeah, it might be a good idea, but I don't think it's going to happen. That's why they want to take away the guns. They don't want to give us a reason to do it.
That's right. Anything else? The only other thing that that I kind of have on this fire thing and all that is, what are the alternatives? Now, solar power, I think, is a great alternative, but it has to be real solar power, meaning you have to be able to go off of the grid completely. There are many people that in California that have solar panels on their house, but they're still dependent the inverters, right? And the battery power
Right.
is still dependent on the same power source. So it almost defeats the whole purpose. But if people, and we know people that have that are completely off of the grid, or can go completely off of the grid if they actually need to, by having their own inverter and by having their own batteries. And you got to be careful with that too, because if you don't know what you are doing, you can create problems. But
Oh, yes.
yeah, there can be some major
Serious
issues
problem.
there. But so to go off of the grid, I think is also to be able to go off of the grid with real solar power is much different than I think what a lot of people who have solar power now, what they could actually do. But
Well, yeah, and then there's magnetic, using electromagnetism to generate energy. You can do that too. And Tesla proved you can take energy out of the atmosphere. And a friend of mine back in California were thinking about the ways of doing that, because there's a difference in potential. The Earth is magnetic, it's electrical in nature, as we see. And in that, you can take energy. Now, the government doesn't want you doing this. If you go off grid in a city that's on power, you will get some governmental interest, as I've noticed. When you start talking, going off grid, creating your own power, or doing anything on your own and getting off of water, garbage, and things like that, if you cut all ties in a city, I think it would create a bureaucratic nightmare, because they wouldn't want everybody doing that, and they try to minimize it. I don't know how they would do that. They would tax it or do some type of way. And I think what's going to happen, solar power, is they're trying to push solar power here in Texas. And they said, and they'll give us free panels.
right,
You got to
right.
contact them, and they'll give us the free panels and install them. They just ask, well, is your roof covered by trees? No. And then they came out like, oh, it's wonderful. Oh, good. Well, thank you. Bye. And they've been calling me, trying to get me to do this. And I'm going, wait a minute. When the government comes and the people say, we're here to help, as Ronald Reagan said,
We're the
"Run."
government. We're here to help.
And I'm
Right.
going, what is behind this solar power push that they want to do this?
Right.
So there's an angle there. And I want to look at that and think about that. And we should do a show on that one
Some
time.
things are too
Yeah,
important to do
too.
yourself.
And some research. because there's something to that. Not just in Texas. This is nationwide, of course. And who has the investiture in the solar companies? If you start getting big names in Washington, then you can start seeing some kind of pattern develop. Uh, and and this is in, of course, Europe also. And I've also watched the shows about the preppers, as they call them. Oh, those that are nuts that are going out prepping, ready for the government to come and get them. But they're just preparing just for what might be. But they go off grid, and I think some of them have come up with stuff they're not talking about and wouldn't ever talk to anybody on the news or anybody else about zero point energy and developing the electromagnetic type generator which generates power, because you got to know what you're doing with that. It's extremely dangerous, and you can actually, if you get a, like one guy did, he developed this rotating device that was and it scared him because it levitated off his desk.
Wow.
And he was going, whoa. It freaked him out. And it was flying, it was kind of floating around. And he cut the power and the source down to it. And then he goes, I just created a levitating saucer. And then you could hear him going, whoa, whoa, like, oh, wait, that means they could do it in bigger stuff. And his lights were coming on with that. But the reality with the solar power is somebody is in control of it. And now I know Texas is a Masonic state. Not to blame the Masons, not to blame anybody, but one of the biggest Masonic halls is here in Waco. In fact, one of the biggest in the world. It makes me think that the Queen has to come visit here often then, right? She's the head Mason. But it strikes me as odd that Kennedy was killed here, and all of the California and Texas now, as I've started to figure out, are sources for things that go nationwide. Texas is an interesting state. Of course, the Bushes base their operations here, and we get a lot of prominent people that come through. You would never hear of them coming through Waco, but I bet you they do, because there's a major Masonic hall here. And they even have a Masonic hall in McGregor, Texas, a little bitty town. Of course, Bush lived close there, and within 19 miles. And I thought, how interesting. And it wasn't there before, because I drove there years before, in 2000, 2001, with the death in the family of my mother and father, and it wasn't there. Then there's this little, then after Bush was elected, I tie it to that, and then there's this little Masonic hall in McGregor, Texas. Of course, nearly every town has one, I've noticed, in Texas. And they're generally grand buildings with ornate fixtures and all the symbolism that Greg has covered.
I don't know what type of wine they have in Texas, though. That's one of the reasons why I'm not sure if I'm going to move there.
There's plenty of good wines I've found
Okay,
here.
all right. Well, I'll take your word for it. You would definitely know.
Well, the guy I talked to that cued me in, he says, what's the basis of the ground here? Limestone? I went, oh, yeah, limestone all around ground. He said, you know what the basis of the ground in France is? I went, oh, you're going to tell me? Yeah, limestone. And he says, we are the France of the United States. I went, oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, but the soil in Killeen, Texas was clay. We had nothing. It was terrible. It was
you wouldn't put a vineyard there.
No.
I'll tell you that right now. And we have the heat, which you need, but not the soil.
Okay.
And you definitely don't have the soil in Belton. But there are places that would. In East Texas, you might get that. But if you get east, you got the weather and the heat issue, and you need the proper heat, the proper soil, and the proper vintner.
Well, here is another reason not to go to Texas. I'm going to give everybody another reason. Two parents' legal battle over whether their 7-year-old is transgender has drawn demands for a child service investigation. This is on BuzzFeedNews.com. I found this
The
article
governor is looking
very
into
interesting.
that.
Yeah, the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services said Thursday that it is reviewing allegations of potential child abuse stemming from an estranged couple's legal custody battle over whether their 7-year-old child is a transgender girl. We're talking about a
Yep.
boy. I mean, this is whatever.
It's
Okay.
ludicrous.
It
Yeah.
It is nuts. And for somebody to tell a child, oh, you're not a boy. Oh, yeah, you're a boy. But really, if you feel and think you're a girl no
You're
matter what your
right.
body is.
Now,
That
is this the same
is
one,
wrong.
Greg, where the mother is a doctor?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
oh, that's the article I read.
Yeah,
She's a
she should be in prison.
I think she's a
Yeah,
pediatrician,
that's
if I remember correctly. Which, yeah, if you've ever dealt with pediatricians, not good. And Georgilus, I guess, is her name, and yeah, it's very, very strange. But I mean, come on. I mean, children should not know about sex
and
at
it's
all
curious.
until they're much older. Whether and to have this even be a talking point. I mean, it's just getting worse. This world is just getting so bad when you think about things like this. And this is just one case that we've heard of. I don't know if there are other cases out there like this that maybe just haven't gotten press
Well,
yet.
the California in the Gay Pride Parade, they had 7 and 8-year-olds dragging
Disgusting. Disgusting.
in
Yes.
drag and
Disgusting.
saying, "Hey, we need to support transgenders. I'm transgender, and look at me. I am on." And I'm going. That's what I heard or read that, and I'm going. Wait, that's abuse. You can't bring a child into a gay parade.
Well, and
Uh,
there are
and it
many.
shows how far this nation has slipped.
Definitely, and here's the crazy thing is that there are many gay people out there who feel the exact same way, that this stuff should not be put in front of children, that this should not even be a topic. If they would not even raise their kids like this, regardless of any of our views here on that. I mean, it just seems like articles like this, are they being shoved in our face? Are cases like this really, is this, because to me it seems like a big problem. Is this really a big problem, or is this something that is just meant to just stir up hatred in Christians?
And I see it as a way to continually numb or dumb down the American society because, when I was a child, I remember that any parent who would dress up a boy in girl's clothing or a girl in boy's clothing and then call them opposite of what they were could be, and oftentimes were, arrested, taken to court, and put in jail for child abuse, child neglect. And this mother and this is by the little boy because the father videotaped him, and I thought the father handled it pretty well and asked the questions, and not a derogatory manner toward the little boy. But when that little boy's like, yeah, my mommy puts me in a dress and my mommy paints my nails and my mommy says I'm a girl, why is she not in prison? I don't understand it. It's child abuse of the highest regard.
Absolutely.
And yet they're trying to normalize it and make the father out to be the villain, and the mother is the one who should be in prison.
Exactly. And what they're doing is also, think about it, is they're teaching children who see this, and those parents who are not against it, teaching these children, then see, that boy is being abused by his father. He's not acknowledging who he is.
He's not
And
allowed
I
to be
think
himself.
they're
Right.
using this
Yeah.
because if it's a child saying it to another child, they may think it's weird, but it gives them exposure
It puts
to
them on a
it,
pedestal.
and then,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, and then it conditions them to accept this as normal,
And then
when
they
it
burn.
is the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not even the same thing as a girl playing with boy toys or a boy playing with quote unquote girl toys. Like my grandson, I know we generally like to stay away from
that's
family,
not
but I want to, I really want to put this out there. Like my grandson loves to cook. He's 5. He just turned 5, but he loves to cook. So what did he want? He wanted to play kitchen. Now,
Yeah.
most people would go, okay, that's a girl thing. He is all boy. through and through, this kid is a boy up and down, but he loves his play kitchen. And so I got him a play kitchen. And it's like, I don't think I'm doing anything. And, I don't go around telling him he's a girl. He's definitely a boy. He will tell you he's a boy, but he will also go and make you pretend muffins.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
In
Yeah.
fact, it's just he's expressing his interest in cooking.
Yes.
And those who are gay or those who are on this boy is a girl, girl is a boy, would say, oh, you know what this indicates? This indicates you're a woman inside just waiting to come
Right.
out. And then they train them into that thought. And because it's an adult, naturally a kid looks up to any adult who's kind and gentle with them and starts explaining things. They think, well, this must be true. And
Right.
it is misleading them. And it is abuse, and it is something that they're not dealing with anymore like they used to. And that's a problem. But what it's doing is they say to get anything to work, you've got to get the children.
Yeah,
Yes.
And that's what they're doing.
that's right. And
And there is,
And
I'm
they're-
sorry, Craig.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in the terminology that they use, transgender, is such a misdirecting thought, because no one is trans. There are very few people.
Or
Let me put it this way.
Transformers. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there are people, and it's sad, but there are people who are born with both sexes.
Yes.
Hermaphrodite.
It's very rare, but it does happen. However, genetically, they're going to be more one than the other. Like, you can have a boy with a Y chromosome, but he could have up to 4 or 5 X's with him, and then that's something called Klinefelters. Now, God still created this as a boy, but with the genetic defects, or will present more as a female, but still has the male chromosomes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people who are, born with, both sexes. They have both genitalia. But these are far between. These are not the same thing as telling someone, oh, you feel like a boy or you feel like a girl? Okay, you are. No, you're not. You cannot change your sex. You cannot change your genetic makeup. It is what it is. And that's why I just get so frustrated with that whole pushing that ideology. They're trying to totally go away from male and female, period.
Yeah.
And everybody can be anything. Well, if that's the case, okay, I want to be the Rothschilds, I want to be Trump, I want to be Obama, and I want all their money now because I'm all of them.
Because you identify as that. Right.
Here's one to go with, and here's what I like. I like your anthology here. I go, what if I feel I'm a chicken?
Yes.
But you have to relate to me as a chicken. You can't talk words. You've got to speak to me in my language. Oh,
Right.
and by the way,
Or else you hate chicken.
I like my nests, and if you and don't offend me, you have to talk to me with the proper pronouns. Oh, no, not male, female, or hen, rooster. It's
Yeah.
that alone. And if you don't relate, and give me the proper tones and each in proper sequence. That's the same thing as a boy saying, I'm a girl and you must use the proper pronouns.
Right.
Yeah, your proper pronoun is what were you born as? What's your genetic
Exactly.
makeup?
And
Right.
they used to call that gender confusion
Yes.
or gender specific disorder. Because
Yeah,
it
the
is a
dysmorphic disorder. Yes.
So have you ever heard of
delusion?
gender dysphoria? Do you know what that is? Because
Is
that's what the mom is, and she is a pediatrician, which it just raises a whole nother issue. But that's what she is diagnosing her son with. Now, I have a few questions about the mom. I'm gonna look up some things about what it means, gender dysphoria. I have no idea what it sounds made up to me. I could have made that up. But
Yeah.
there would be a few questions that I would have for this mom, and I do think that we need to make sure that nothing improper is going on between the mom and the son. First of all, I would like to know if the mom is straight, or if the mom is one of these people who identifies as a guy. if that had anything to do with their 2016 breakup. Um, but regardless, and the other thing is, I like to know what type of drugs this mom is on, because these pediatricians have no problem telling people to get their shot, to get their drugs, to do all of that stuff. I'd be very curious about that. I'm not accusing this person of anything, but if you're gonna do this to your child, there's just something wrong with it. So I'm gonna read here. Gender dysphoria is a condition where a person experiences discomfort or distress because there's a mismatch between their biological sex and gender identity. It's sometimes known as gender incongruence. I've never heard of this before.
You know what? That's almost made up, because let me tell you why. Gender dysphoria is a condition where a person experiences what? Discomfort or distress because there's a mismatch between who they are and what they want to be or what they feel. And they say gender identity to get away from what it is, the thought of the delusion in their mind that there's somebody else, like me saying I'm a chicken. If I told y'all that and really meant it and believed it, what would you think of my mental state? You'd go,
Yeah, there's something wrong.
That's something's really wrong. And the same truth applies to gender identity or gender dysphoria. And it says it's sometimes known as incongruence. Well, yeah, incongruence not with the fact of the gender and the identity, but in the mind of the person with reality. Incongruence with reality.
Right, in the finishing sentence there where it says biological sex is assigned at birth depending on the appearance of the genitals. No, because if we go back to what I was talking about earlier, if you have a boy that is born with Klinefelters, he is going to have the appearance of the male genitalia, but he's going to be, genetically far more female. So, again, it's like the constant twisting. How did they get away with this? How did this get so out of hand?
Well, one of the things is, and I'll tell you really, it's because of getting people in the right places. Because I remember my mother said, if you want to change something, you've got to get into the position to do something and to make your position known. And the one thing that the gay and the transgender community has done is, one, get out in public. And one of the ones that have done this and how it has gotten around, well, y'all are missing one point. Where do they promote these things more than anywhere else? And y'all have to know this. Come on. Greg, you're from which state?
California.
Okay, and what in California kind of espouses this?
The gay pride.
Not only
I don't
that.
know. I have no idea.
What is in down south in LA?
Oh, Hollywood.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, you're right.
And what do people follow ever since it really began with Charlie Chaplin back then?
Yep. The movies.
Is everybody looks at Hollywood and wants to emulate the rich and beautiful.
Yep.
And what are the rich and beautiful saying? And what are they telling the kids that are listening to them? They're getting to the children through the movies, and it's teaching them. And you look at it, and you'll see children in them acting in, oh, that's just him. He's got gender identity. He's really a woman in a boy's body. They will actually say things like that in these movies. And what does that do to children? They're like, oh, that must, my mom had done it. They're not telling me the truth. It brings a conflict to the children, and most of them, due to their lack of knowledge and experience and understanding, unless they're under a spiritual household that's really tied to the Bible, they're not going to get the correct guidance. It'll be a parent that doesn't have the guidance of the Bible would have to say, well, I don't know. It's up to the individual who they are, which is going to be kind of what a lot of parents would say. But you're a boy, right? You know you're a boy, right? And the boy might get confused, like, well, I don't know. And see, that's what the movies introduced, is that confusion, which opens the door for this type of behavior, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, and and I agree, and I was really surprised, even though I'd heard about it forever, because the subliminal messaging is nothing new, right? And I remember one time when my foster son came home with his girlfriend, and they come, bursting through the door going, "Mom, you got to see this, you got to see this." And I'm like, "What?" And they go, "Put on your VCR," because back then it was the VCR tapes. I forget what they are, but the tapes.
The
And
VHS.
put in your tape of Little Mermaid. And I'm like, "Okay." And they're like, "Oh, you won't believe what they put in here." And I'm like, "Oh, you guys, okay, just stop. You're just being crazy little teenagers." And so they start going through the Little Mermaid frame by frame at certain sections.
Uh-huh.
And then in the wedding scene between the mermaid, which is disgusting anyway, a fish and a man, but hey, there you go. But this man's not married, like you're saying, he's marrying a fish. And but the preacher, when they're doing it frame by frame, which is not something most people talk about, and I still have my VCR tape, you see not only does the one who's marrying this couple drop his pants and he's wearing red heart underwear, but he gets an erection.
Oh,
And I'm like, this isn't a child's movie.
Huh.
Why? What was the purpose of that? There
that's
is no
disgusting.
purpose.
No.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
oh yeah. And I thought and then they point out the other things in the movie where you see clearly on the front where there's the male genitals on the very front as one of the pillars. And I'm just like going, what is Disney thinking? And I never trusted Disney after that at all. I just,
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah,
That is,
Phallic worship. That's all it was.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
and
that
that
was
goes
back in
back to
the
Egypt.
yeah, I mean that was a big story back in the 90s, I think, right? I mean when that
And
movie
and and
came out,
what's
somebody got fired for that for putting of course it was like, "Oh, it's just this one guy and he was drawing it and then he got fired later, so he had this problem and nobody saw it and nobody caught it."
And I
And
don't believe that for
yeah,
not for one moment.
yeah, I know.
well,
Yeah.
just think about it. What's in Washington?
Yeah, phallic.
What's in the Vatican? St. Peter's Square. The
It's everywhere.
Oh
imagery,
yeah, the
Yep.
obelisks.
Yeah.
Yep.
and also the phallic symbol, like at the Lincoln Memorial, that tall.
Yep.
The same thing is in
It's in Rome,
Yeah.
isn't it?
London
Too? Yeah.
and in
It's
Vatican.
the phallic symbol of Horus. And it's like people just they don't put all of that together and it's like, why are we having these things all over our country?
And Lady Libertas,
Yeah. Yep.
idols. And it goes into the fact of that there are some that are following after those things, like the pharaohs, like they are descended down through the lineage and bloodlines that are to rule, like our presidents are all related.
Hmm.
Hillary Clinton is a cousin to guess who? Donald Trump.
Oh, I
No.
don't doubt that.
Really? I've never
Yeah.
heard that before.
I
Yes,
know Obama and the Bushes are related, right?
that's right. And
Yep.
related to the Trumps.
I thought the
And
Bushes and the Clintons are related too somehow.
Well, I think they all are. They keep it in the family. It's all in the
it's
family.
it's by the
The
blood. The
bloodlines.
one, if
13
you want to
bloodlines.
look at anybody who's going to win an election, look at the one who's got the most royal blood. They will win the election.
Yeah.
The crazy thing here, I'm reading, and they have twins. So this couple that is going through this legal battle or whatever, they have other children, if I'm reading
Oh,
this
wow.
correctly.
That's scary.
Twins. They have twin children. I don't know.
Wow.
I mean, this whole thing
Well,
can get crazy. So a Dallas jury on Tuesday ruled in favor of the mom, effectively granting her sole managing conservatorship of the two children. In its 11-1 ruling, the jury empowered the mom with the right to make all medical and psychological decisions for the couple's children. Now, this has been a big problem. This is a big problem in
That's huge.
California, where the fathers almost have no rights, and at the same time, they are being called deadbeat dads. Now, of course, there are some deadbeat dads out there. There's deadbeat
Right.
mom, there's deadbeat parents. But it should
Right.
never be about, well, the mom has more right over the child as the father. And in California, you see that all the time. And it's frustrating because there are many good dads out there. And there are many people who try to be good dads and are put in this spot here. It makes it very difficult. And to any of those dads out there, keep going. Do not give up. All you can do is your best. God sees everything. And God knows that you tried your best to do the best for that child. That's what God wants. That's what we need to see. That's what every child wants to see, is that your parent did the best that they could, whether they
And
go ahead.
that jury, how is a jury going to take away a father's rights because he's trying to protect his child?
It's Dallas. I don't know.
Well, the one thing that they have, and I'll guarantee you, this is where it comes down to. You get in. Remember what I said. You've got to get in the position. They have got people now that are judges in these courts, and I've noticed judges start legislating from the bench or interfering with a right legal direction from the bench when they don't have the authority to do so.
Right.
And you will see it all around. And like the Supreme Court authorizing premeditated murder of children, where did that come from? That you can just abort a child because, oh, I don't want it. Oops, okay, too bad. And they said you could abort it. And then now, look where we've come to. You can abort a full-term born baby, basically, right up to birth.
And after.
If it survives the abortion, you can kill it.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the origin of the Moloch worship. And I say that this country is led by some people in power who have to sacrifice for their power. Because that's what they did in the ancient age. They would sacrifice their children, their animals, and their wives, and whoever. And this, to me, represents paying homage to Satan, basically, and the sacrificing of innocent blood that hasn't come forth and lived. And that may sound crazy, but I think that's what they're doing to earn, quote unquote. They think that brings them power, to sacrifice virgin blood. And I go, oh my goodness. I've read stories about this. And no, it's not prolific, but I think there are some out there that work in positions of power. All you have to do is get into the position of power, i.e., you get into the Supreme Court. And then you don't tell them who and what you are. You keep it under wraps. You never discuss it. You only reveal it to those who are with you and of you and in the same genre of people. And so I think, just like with the gay thing, you get certain people in the right position, power positions of judge, leadership, or Congress, or whatever. And they're doing that. Like the Muslims are now being elected to Congress. Same thing. Once you get into positions of power, you begin to affect what you can do to advance only that cause that you went into power for in the first place. And one of the things I see this leading to is pedophilia becoming legal.
Yeah.
What?
Oh yeah, it's coming.
I've heard the story that they're working that is a separate lifestyle, and if the child is unharmed, and what child is unharmed in this? Come on. But, and how easy is it to convince a child? Well, see, everybody else says it's okay.
That's what this mother
Once
did.
once they jumps that hurdle, like the gays did, then you're opening the door to, oh, I can't think of it. I can't even say it. I'm not going to. But you're opening the door to immense abuse that doesn't get judged correctly. And that's what I've seen in stories, that some people, and that one guy that was running for Congress saying, yes, I'm a pedophile, but it's just an alternate thing, and I have never abused, raped, or done anything to any child. I'm going, so you're waiting for the
and
future.
that's such a joke, because how would he know he's a pedophile? Is he watching child pornography, which means his child was hurt and damaged? It's like, what a sick freak.
Right.
And the problem is when they do that, And see, this is where these transgender young children, pretty soon it's going to be, well, they can have a relationship. You can't deny them. That's their right.
That's all
We're
right.
taking away the
Right.
power of the president and the family, the parent and the family. The reason they're doing that is so they can introduce the destruction that they want. The evil, woe to the nation calls evil good and good evil. And that's what's happening. We're reversing everything. At least in the United States, it's happening.
Yeah.
That's where I see where all this is headed. And it's not that man is in control. We have to look at the spiritual aspect. This is a satanic assault on the orthodoxy of human life as the Father created.
Yep.
And we need to look at it realistically.
That's right. And
Yeah.
there was some good news in this case, and we're kind of still going back and forth on it, but uh, there was a judge, Kim Cooks, who reinstated the parents' joint conservatorship, according to a reporter covering the proceedings at the Texan, a news site founded in 2019 by a former Republican state senator. The judge ruled that a parenting facilitator would be appointed and the two parents would share rights and duties of the children, including decisions about their medical care. All right, so I don't
Okay.
know if that means, is that where we're at here? After Tuesday's decision, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the jury decision was being looked into by the state attorney general. So it's going up higher, right? So it's like one judge, one court rules this, another court rules that, right? So I don't know. I don't know this much about this judge, but I'm really glad that Judge Kim Cooks, you know, saw that. I mean,
That was a good decision.
yeah, that really was, because both parents should matter. I mean, that's a whole
Yeah.
nother issue. Who was on this jury and who selected the jury, whatever. But okay, so on Thursday, I think that's pretty much the update on this case. But it's a very interesting case, and it's almost one of those cases that are kind of meant, it's put out there so that people will start talking about it. And I think it's meant to get people angry, people that are angry, people that don't want to, and I just hope that that's not the case. And when people listen to us talking about this, that it doesn't, get them angry or get them mad or anything. The purpose that we're talking about this is because we love people, because we want to help people. That's what this is, and they don't understand that this is wrong. This is not love. What they're doing, turning people gay and turning them into these things, it's not love. It's not good for them. It's not the way that God intended it. It's not the way that it's supposed to be. And it's so out in our face right now, and it's everywhere, and it's like we're the bad ones for saying that this is wrong. There's something it's just a backwards world, but it's all in scripture. For anyone that reads their scripture, it's all there. This is the way that it was always going to go. You can clearly see what is coming, what is here, and what will be until Christ comes back. But Walter, this is the stuff that we would talk about working at family radio, and
Yes.
and I did not see it then. I never thought that it would get here.
And I'm surprised at the speed that it has transitioned. And one of the things that German, your father-in-law, we were Orthodox people, and we'd talk over different things, had our disagreements and things, but we talked, this nation is gone,
Yeah.
and this is going to speed up. I didn't think this would happen the way it is, especially the transgender children issue.
Yeah, the children. I
That
mean, it's
caught me off guard, and then I saw where it was leading, and then I found an article about the guy saying, pedophiles are not bad people. I went, what?
and
No,
this is
they're not
just
good at all.
this is the stuff that we're just hearing about. This stuff has been happening
Yep.
for a long time. It's just now being talked about. It's just now being brought out. But there are people out there who have lived like this for many, many years.
Yes.
That it's crazy. And
And the, yeah,
Southern California. Look to Southern California if you want to
yeah.
figure out how to fix
Well, the
this
thing
problem.
is, they say that Trump and guess who was tied to the gentleman who committed suicide, Epstein, in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And they said he supplied children to prominent people,
Right.
royals, and everybody. And I thought, wow, royals, politicians, well known Hollywood types, where in Hollywood, the Corey Haim and all of those that talked about, oh yeah, we had to deal with sexual issues all the time with the power brokers in Hollywood and the royals. So this trafficking of children and the abuse, sexual abuse of children, of those in Hollywood, especially those coming out of Disney, Miley Cyrus. You look at how the transformation of these people from Hannah Montana to where she is today. Look at the difference. And they make all these points, and we see that the government and the military is tied to Hollywood in a lot of their movies. And it is interesting that these actors and actresses talk about the abuse. Michael Jackson talking about the Illuminati and how these people are just doing evil and that they affected him. And I'm thinking, people aren't looking and listening to this. They hear it, and all of a sudden they're blinded by something else that calls them away. But I note these things and I remember them. And one of the most distressing things is that these things come up, and the government and those who are in authority to do something about it, you notice there's no real interaction that comes from it. A little bit. Weinstein. Oh, we need a sacrificial lamb. Who do we give up? Yeah, him. Epstein. Boom. You have a couple of people, and then it gets buried. The media drops it quickly. And the Epstein case is a very good one. It was top notch, and he was a big one that was tied to many people in power.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I already knew once he was in prison, I thought, and in the jail in New York, I think, he isn't going to make it out at all. He's going to die. And I knew it. I didn't say it. I felt and saw that he isn't going to come out of this.
Well, see, and I still believe he's alive. I think he was sprung, because the body that they showed that was supposedly him was not him.
And I know that. And that happens in so many of these types of issues.
Yep.
He's dead, so he's no longer prosecutable.
Yes.
And they drop all charges.
Yep.
And so he gets a new identity, has a makeover. He's somebody else.
And they continually abuse more and more children.
Right.
And oh yeah, and Trump was implicated in that. And there are stories about abuse of children by Trump. And see, the thing is, he's president, and he came behind and defeated Clinton. And Clinton and him have this great distaste for each other. I think that's staging. And I really believe they do this to diffuse the public's knowledge or looking into those things. And it works 90% of the time, or most of the time, maybe more than that. That the public are placated by, Trump is good at face and talk. He really is. And I voted for him because it's because I didn't want to vote for Hillary. And I knew if I voted third party, well, that means Trump gets it anyway. Might as well vote Trump. If you're voting third party, you're voting for Trump. Because I didn't see Hillary making it into office. But this is scarily part of Congress and part of the people in power. And because of that, they're wanting to remove the legal boundaries before the design. And I think that's where this comes from. And I think that's where it always came from. They started with the gay thing, and now they're just working their way to their true prize, to being able to get to the children. And that sounds sick and demented, and it is. And that's what I think this has been all about. They want children in relationships because they look back in ancient history in Greece and everything where this was quote unquote permitted as long as the child was compensated and was not harmed. That's what I read about in Greece. So they're trying to bring that type of mentality, and they're doing it to a certain degree because you see mothers that do that with their child.
Yep.
And then, where did she get this idea from? Where did this come from? It's come from all the gender equality, they call it. Gender equality. What do you mean, gender equality? No, it's sexual deviancy acceptance, is what it's
Yep.
called in
Yep.
reality. Accept my deviancy as normal and parade it as good and natural, just as man, woman, that are naturally bound to each other by nature, and call us natural like that. No, it's unnatural. And then it gets beyond that into sin. And then if you change your gender, one guy was in a Baptist story saying that's not a sin.
Hmm.
I went, wait a minute, that's misrepresenting yourself. It's a lie. So therefore, yes, it is a sin. And I made a comment on Facebook about that. And I'm surprised Facebook isn't eventually going to call it hate speech, which are going to label the Bible and Christians as haters because we preach the truth. That's why the hate speech and thing is coming from that. They're directing at that to get the pedophilia in there and get it all just, we're all just loving one another. And you out there are preaching hate. We're going to have to get rid of you and make it illegal for you to preach the Bible or talk. And it's starting slowly, but that's what's happening. And that means eventually we'll be put in jail for preaching truth or trying to counsel somebody away from their delusions or their mental illness. In this case, I think that's really a mental illness.
Yeah.
So that's where I think it's going. And it's behind it all is the master of darkness, Satan. And he does it with a gullible, unknowing community. And those that he comes in and says, oh, that's not good for their rights. The Constitution says rights for everybody. And you hear them fall back on the Constitution. Well, we deserve our rights too. We will not back down. They're doing it like that. And so they're diffusing the fact that this is a mental aberrancy that is not natural, because it's always been not natural. And even France forced on its people by the parliament gay marriage. None of the, it was overwhelmingly against it, but they did it anyway. Just like abortion, they just push it and go, no, this is it. This is what you get. And it's our governments that are trying to set themselves up not as government made to seduce and put away evil and destroy it, not seduce it, but to contain it and destroy it and deliver us from it. But now they're promoting it, as it says, woe to that nation calls wrong right and right wrong. We are now there. And not only are they doing that, they're actually advancing more and more evil based on that. I think y'all both see it, as I do. And we're in a short order. Now, when will the judgments come? They've begun slightly, in my opinion, as we notice these hurricanes. Dorian skirted it, and I thought that was just a little saying the Father is merciful. As you notice, our hurricane season wasn't too bad as far as for the United States. Unfortunately, for the Caribbean and Haiti and all those people out there, it was horrid. They had a lot of death, and I don't want to downplay their losses. But for the United States, this year was not as bad as it could have been. And there's a place where the Father gives us time to repent. We should take note of that, and all people, and at the government level, begin to proclaim it. I like the way Trump mentions the Father and the Bible and everything, but I don't think he's totally genuine. I think they kind of chose him because he can say what he will and make it believable. He's good at that. The art of the deal, person. Sell the sell that you want to sell and get it across to the people. And he does it well, and to the point where they'll fight other people. I won't do that, of course. And Antifa, look at that. We have all these divisive things which come about because of this. And that leads to what? Martial law if it breaks out. And I think the media and certain ones in the government, not all, are leading division, the Democratic Party particularly. And they're going in people's face with all their diatribe and speak against Trump, which is just illegal. They're breaking the law doing what they're doing. And it's getting close into treason what they're doing. And yet Pelosi and all of them just march right ahead, no consequences. Nobody's standing up, not the Republicans either, because they're behind her on this. The Republican and Democratic Party don't like Trump, at least outwardly, but behind the scenes, I think this is all staged for a purpose. And I'm looking at that to think what will be the outcome and what are they looking for? Are they trying to knock down the fear of the Republican side and the nation that says that no, we shouldn't be governed like this? We should follow the Constitution, because even the ones who are out here who are Democrats and are Republicans who are not in Congress and involved with that realize we should follow the Constitution, and we're not doing that at all.
Yeah.
The Constitution has been gone a long time, and they haven't followed it. And Bush said, "Oh, Constitution's push." I mean, the younger Bush said it's just a piece of paper, and I thought, well, that's how all of people up in D.C., separate country from the U.S., city state. Once you get there and you stay there for years, you're no longer subject to the laws of the United States. You're subject to the laws of D.C., and there can be quote unquote exceptions for those who are Congress who actually make the law and rule the law. So people have to understand that three city flag banner that they fly in Washington, three yellow stars under a red background. What does that mean? There's Washington, D.C., the Vatican, and London, the banking center. So people have to understand those things and look at them, critically, and understand what it represents. And that's what's leading all of this. And to break down a nation's sovereignty, you have to get division and uproar to where the United Nations comes in, because they call for United Nations help, and then brings into the New World Government. But you have to create a problem to solve a problem.
Yep.
And they're doing a good job.
I agree.
And it won't be long for the United States will be in the state of civil war. They're going to keep going till they get it. And with the untrained youth, it'll happen eventually.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I worry about the way that we kind of find ourselves. Some of us find ourselves kind of building up Trump, and is he being built up for this rise, for this fall? And what type of fall would that be? And I do think the only fall that they could ever put on Trump is to take him out. That's all that they could do.
I don't mean by politically. I think they will have an assassination.
Yeah, and if they did that, oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of pissed off people. A lot of pissed off people.
And they're building strong allegiance to Trump, almost like a demigod.
Well, I don't know. I don't see myself as that, and I am a Trump supporter. I do support him
as the lesser of two evils, which is not a good way to vote.
No, that's no, probably not. No. But I didn't vote for him like that. No, I didn't vote for any lesser of, I never saw my vote like that. I took it very, very seriously. And
I did too.
Yeah, I really wanted to treat that vote the same way that I treated every other vote, and the way that I see how we need to hold everybody. They can't just, okay, they're on our team, so then we have to back them up and everything. These aren't gang wars, and we are seeing a lot of this stuff where it's us against them. Trump is one person, but I've watched almost every speech. I've listened to him. I try to engage into what he's doing, and I find it very entertaining. First of all, I watch wrestling. It's very similar. It is theater. It's good theater. I enjoy watching it, but there is a lot of it that I agree with him on, and there are a lot of things that I see happening, maybe not that he's doing, but the people that he puts in place doing. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that we're seeing all of these child trafficking stuff. All of these rings are being busted. Those people are on their toes. Those people are running scared, as they should be. I don't think that it's a coincidence that that's happening and Trump's in office. You know what I mean? So I think there are some deeper things. But I've followed Trump since WrestleMania 4, when WrestleMania 4 was held at Trump Plaza. And Trump is sitting right there in the front row throughout the whole show. But it was different. I never really cared that much for him during all of his heyday, when everybody was watching his show and all that stuff. But when I listened to his speeches, I think that was really where he first captured me. And then within the first year, dealing with all of the people that are bringing about all of this stuff that has nothing to do with what is going to help this country. There's no Russian stuff. There's all that stuff is just garbage. But there are
That's right.
real things. There are real things that Trump needs to be he needs to be called out on. I would say starting with September 11th. And that's always been the big one because of his comments. Somebody needs to ask him what his view is. If he's this person who just can tell you his view on this, on any topic, we want to know his view on that. We want to know if Trump really, is going to stand by what he said about bombs being in that building, or does he feel differently now? It's like there are many people like me who voted for him, who have real questions and who really want to understand if he's the same as everybody else, or if he's different. And I think after he's gone in 8 years, I think then I'll really be able to sit back and say, well, I like this about Trump, or I didn't like that about it. For me right now, I'm treating him the same way I treated every other president. I'm looking at what they're doing, trying to understand what they're doing, and just judging them by what they do, not by what they say.
And that's the bottom line. And I figure, based on my nature of looking at what's really happening, I didn't expect Trump to win, to be honest. I voted for him, but I thought Hillary might take it. And I wasn't going to vote for Hillary because I didn't believe in anything she stood for, most of it. And I have litmus tests. If they believe in abortion, they definitely can't be representing anything good apart from that, because when you do that, that's just tacitly saying, I agree with first-degree murder. And the Supreme Court was wrong to make that ruling. But getting to my point now, Trump, I think, was somebody that was put in office. Yeah, he won the electoral vote, not the popular vote, but he got the right states to get the electoral vote. And they say, do away with the electoral vote. We should have put Clinton in. No, the electoral vote is there to protect us from just certain areas controlling the office. Because if you take away the electoral college, Texas, California, New York, Florida, maybe Ohio, those states would always be the ones that would elect the president. If it's based just strictly on popular vote. Because between California and Texas, New York, and Florida, you've got a lot of the population tied up right in those 4 states. And if you took those 4 states, wow, you've got a lot of clout already. And then you just take a few other states elsewhere, and then you've got a majority. And that would be a catastrophic end to the plurality of presidents that you get, either Democrat or Republican. Because if all of them were, say, blue states, Republican, it would be a Republican every time. Democrat, it'd be a one-party system thereafter. So what does that mean? Well, one of the things that happens is it's truly a one-party system. It's a two-faced party, like Janice, whatever you want to say. And it's the good guy, good cop, bad cop. Right now, the Democrats are playing bad cop, and the Republicans are appearing to be good. And they do this, and I think there's a unity behind the scenes that we do not see. And you said it's like theater, and I think that's the way they play it. And I think the vice president is a messenger who sits where? At the head of the Senate to kind of help guide the president the way to go. And that's kind of how it's set up. The people of power that influence us, no, they're not all unified. The elite are all not unified, and behind us there's factions and everything. And we see that playing out in Congress and in other nations of the world. And unfortunately, many don't understand that Satan is the power of this world, and he gives it to whom he will, under the direction of the Father and how he wants it to go. So how did this play out with Trump being placed in power? I look at it like I did Obama. It's part of the judgment. It's two-pronged. One that shows it's against you, one that has a prettier face and prettier words, but not a prettier agenda, in my opinion. And like you said, Greg, building it up for what, a great fall?
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't know what, but I think you're right. I think it's going that direction. And you notice how he started out with a lot of voicification, a lot of this and a lot of tweets, and how slowly tapering off. It is. He still does it. But it's not as adamant and in your face and strong as he was previously and in his campaign. And I'm looking at what he's going to do in this next campaign and see how he behaves within this next year. And we will need to compare that and have a show on it between that when he started in 2015 and then now for the 2020 election.
Yeah.
And then see what's been accomplished and how that ties into us being deceived. Because I think there's a deception involved in that.
Oh yeah, I think we're going to have many shows on that. I think we should wrap this show up unless you have any topics you want to bring up, or else we'll come
Catherine,
back for
do you
part
have
two.
anything?
No, I'm pretty good for tonight. Yeah, I'm tired. It's
Yeah, it is 10
trying to
o'clock.
get back in the swing of things. So
And the thing I think we can conclude with this is that in government, not all the governments, or even California, I don't think the state per se is, burning up itself, so to speak, and I don't think PG&E is behind it all. That's too simple. Because there's some complexity here that gets down to, Occam's razor. The simplest explanation will give you the truth most times, but that's not always the fact. But that's a good guide. But anyway, my final word on this is that we have to keep looking for the truth, because the truth will always be there. But there are some people that try to layer it and cover it up and present things that they say are truth that may look like truth, acts like truth, smells like truth, but is actually a lie. It's like Satan in the garden. And it's always turning back to questioning the Word and the Creator. Oh, did he really mean that? Is it really true that there's only one sex? What if you feel and know you're a woman and you really know it? That is conflicting the truth. And when you find conflict with truth, it's always got a base, not in just that person. We have to love that person, but in a spiritual element of where they have been deceived in their minds, thoughts, and in their hearts. Gays are like that. They have been deceived by their own collaboration with each other. They fail to see the reality because that's not reality to them. The reality is who they are, and they don't see anything external as part of reality. It's just what they feel and think is true. That's it. And that means they can deny Scripture. Oh, that's not real. My experience. In other words, we made ourselves gods, and they make themselves gods, saying, oh, no. My experience trumps, no pun, the Bible and everything it's saying, because I know it so therefore I declare it's law. And nobody can do that but the Father. And they've got to learn that that's just not the way it is. And in their hearts deeply, they do understand it because all know that he exists. Whether they give him a name and follow that and know it's the Bible, that can be debated to some extent. But the Father says they know me and they know that they are wrong. And that's something that they have to deal with, especially in the days of judgment, which quickly come. But with that, that's my final word. And all of these things have an answer in the truth, and you have to be open to receive it. Whether you're gay, transgendered, or anything, the Bible deals with your issue and tells you one thing. You're not what you think. You are what you are, and you have to really deal with it from a biblical perspective to get to the truth and be who you really are. Don't be afraid to be who you are realistically, not what is in your mind or what you think of yourself, because that can be a sin-based thought which can never guide you right. Even heterosexual or anybody else cannot be guided by their own thoughts. They have to have a basis in reality, which is the truth of the Bible. And with that, I have to say good night. And unless y'all have anything else to add, I'm finished.
Just have a good night, everyone, and thanks for joining us. And thanks for having me on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and peace upon you. May the Father guide you and keep you. If you don't believe, you don't have to listen to me. It's up to you.